This emotional love story is about a slow burn romance that changes everything. It starts quietly, but it doesn't end that way. These are the moments we don't plan but never forget. My name is Alex. I wasn't looking for a mystery. I had just turned 34, my life neatly divided into predictable routines. Work, gym, groceries, sleep, no chaos. No surprises. I liked it that way. So when the envelope appeared in my mailbox, it felt out of place, like a mistake someone hadn't corrected. Inside was a single page. I don't know if this will reach you, but if it does, I need you to understand something before anything else. This isn't an accident. There was no signature, no context, just the quiet certainty of someone who knew more about my life than they should. I waited for the second letter. I don't know why. Curiosity, maybe, or the strange feeling that the first letter wasn't asking for a response. It was testing me. 3 days later, another envelope arrived. Same handwriting. This one started differently. I used to watch you from across the street. Not in a dangerous way. In a wondering way. That line made my stomach tighten. I looked out my apartment window, scanning the street below. Nothing unusual. No one watching. Or at least no one I could see. The third letter arrived the following week. By then I was hooked. It said, "You always leave your apartment at 7:12 a.m. You hesitate at the door like you're deciding whether today is worth it. Most days you decide it is." That was accurate. Uncomfortably accurate. I should call the police. Instead, I folded the letter and put it in my desk drawer. Because something about her words didn't feel threatening. It felt familiar. The fourth letter changed everything. My name is Chloe. And the reason I'm writing to you is because you once saved my life. Without ever knowing it, I sat back in my chair, heart pounding. I had no memory of her. No dramatic rescue. No moment that stood out. But the letter continued. You won't remember me? That's the point. I tried to stop reading after that. I really did. But when the fifth letter arrived, curiosity won. Chloe explained how years ago she had been standing on the edge of a decision she didn't believe she could survive. How a stranger, me, had unknowingly disrupted her plans simply by speaking to her in a grocery store aisle. I remembered the moment I'd dropped a jar. She'd laughed. We'd talked for less than a minute. Then we'd gone our separate ways. Apparently, she hadn't. The letters kept coming, each one revealing pieces of her life, her recovery, her quiet observation of mine from a distance she believed was safe. She never crossed lines, never followed, never approached, until I received the following letter. I'm writing to you because I'm finally well, and because there's something I've never told you, something I think you deserve to know. My hands shook as I read the last line, because suddenly I wasn't just curious anymore. I was afraid of what came next. The final sentence of that letter was underlined twice. In her next letter, she said, "If you agree to meet me, I need you to promise you'll hear everything, even the parts that might change how you see me." I stared at the page long after the sun went down, and for the first time in years, my carefully predictable life felt like it was about to split open. I didn't reply right away. I carried Chloe's letters with me for days, folded and refolded, like something fragile I wasn't sure I was allowed to own. Every time I reached for my phone, my hand hesitated, because agreeing to meet her meant acknowledging something I'd spent years avoiding. That my life was quiet not because it was peaceful, but because it was unfinished. On the fifth night, I opened my laptop and typed a single sentence. I don't know what I'm agreeing to, but I'll listen, Alex. I hit send before I could overthink it. Her reply came less than a minute later. Thank you. Tomorrow, 6 p.m., I'll tell you where. We met at a public place. Her idea. A cafe near the river, the kind with mismatched chairs and soft music that made conversations feel private even when they weren't. I arrived early and chose a table where I could see the door. At exactly 6, she walked in. I knew it was her immediately. Not because I recognized her face. I didn't. But because she scanned the room like someone preparing herself for disappointment. Chloe was smaller than I expected. Calm in her movements. Her hair tucked behind one ear, as if she'd done it 1,000 times to steady herself. When our eyes met, she stopped. Just for a second. Then she smiled. And the tension I hadn't realized I was holding finally released. I was afraid you wouldn't come, she said, sitting down. I almost didn't, I admitted. She nodded. That's fair. Up close, she didn't look dangerous, or obsessive, or unstable. She looked normal. The kind of normal you stop trusting once you've been surprised enough times. I owe you an explanation, she said. Yes, I replied. You do. She told me everything, slowly, carefully, as if choosing the right words mattered more than saying them quickly. Years ago, she had been spiraling, a quiet kind of collapse. No one noticed because she was still functioning, still smiling, still showing up, until the day she stood in that grocery store aisle staring at nothing, trying to decide whether to keep going. You dropped a jar, she said softly, and swore under your breath. Then you laughed at yourself. I remembered that. You apologized to me like I was the one you inconvenienced, she continued. It startled me. That someone could be so present. I swallowed. That was it, I asked. She shook her head. That was the interruption. After that day, she didn't get better immediately. But something shifted. She started noticing moments instead of endings. She sought help, slowly rebuilt herself, and somehow, without meaning to, she started noticing me. Not following, not intruding, just noticing. You were proof, she said, that ordinary moments could matter. I leaned back, trying to process the weight of what she was saying. And the letters? I asked. Why now? She hesitated, then finally said the thing I hadn't expected. Because I'm leaving. She was moving across the country. New job, new life, a clean break. And I couldn't leave without telling you, she said. Because if I didn't, you'd just remain a moment in my past. And you deserve more than that. I stared at her. And what do you want from me now? I asked quietly. Her voice wavered. I don't know. That honesty hit harder than anything else she'd said. We didn't touch. We didn't flirt. We talked for hours about our lives, our disappointments, the versions of ourselves we never became. When the cafe closed, we walked along the river instead. At one point, she stopped and looked at me. I need to tell you something else, she said. Something harder. I braced myself. I didn't just watch you, she said. I avoided you, because I was afraid that if I spoke to you, you'd stop being what you were. And what was that? I asked. She smiled sadly. Hope. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was afraid, but because I was awake in a way I hadn't been in years. The next morning, I found another letter in my mailbox. The last one. I don't expect anything from you. I just wanted you to know that you mattered long before you ever knew me. I read it 3 times. Then I did something completely out of character. I took the day off work. We met again that evening. This time, there was no mystery between us, just the fragile truth of two people standing at the edge of something unnamed. "I leave in 2 weeks," she said. I nodded. We sat in silence. And then she asked the question I hadn't dared to. "Why did you come back today?" she asked. I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "Because I don't want to be a moment anymore." Chloe looked at me then, really looked. And for the first time since this began, I saw fear in her eyes. Not of me, but of what might happen if she stayed. The fear in Chloe's eyes didn't fade when the silence stretched between us. It sharpened. "I need to tell you something," she said finally. "And once I do, you might decide you don't want to see me again." I forced a calm I didn't feel. "You don't get to decide that for me." She nodded. "That's fair." We walked without direction, the city dimming around us. The conversation felt heavier now, like we'd crossed an invisible line where politeness no longer mattered. "I didn't just write the letters," she said. "I kept copies." That didn't seem terrible. Still, something in her tone warned me it wasn't the real confession. "I kept them because I thought, if I ever lost my courage, I'd need proof that I once had it." I waited. "There was a period," she continued, "when writing to you was the only thing that made me feel anchored." The word landed wrong. "Anchored how?" I asked. She stopped walking. "Dependent," she said quietly. My chest tightened. For a while I told myself the letters were harmless, that I wasn't asking anything of you, that it was just expression. She met my eyes, but I was lying to myself. I didn't interrupt. I wanted to say that writing letters didn't make someone dangerous, but I could tell she needed to finish. "There were nights," she said, voice shaking now, "when I wrote because I felt like if I didn't, I'd disappear again." The implication hung between us. Not obsession. Survival. And suddenly the story I'd been telling myself shifted shape. "So you were using me," I said before I could stop myself. Her face fell, not in anger, but in recognition. "Yes," she said. "At first. The honesty hurt more than denial would have. But then," she added quickly, "it changed. I got stronger. The letters became less about holding myself together and more about letting go." I nodded slowly, trying to reconcile the contradiction. "Why didn't you stop then?" I asked. "Because I was afraid," she said, "that if I stopped, I'd lose the version of myself who believed in moments." We sat on a low stone wall overlooking the water. The city noise felt far away. "I didn't want to meet you," she admitted. "Not really." I turned toward her. "I wanted you to stay who you were, untouched by all of this. But when I realized I was leaving, it felt wrong to disappear without telling you the truth." "And the part you still haven't told me?" I asked. She inhaled sharply. "I almost didn't send the first letter," she said, "because the day I decided to, I found out something." My stomach dropped. "What?" I asked. She closed her eyes. "You were engaged." The word hit me like a slap. "I was..." "What?" I said. She opened her eyes. 3 years ago. There was a photo online. Congratulations post. Understanding rushed in, bitter and sharp. "Yes," I said slowly. "I was." Her shoulders slumped. "I didn't know the story," she said. "Only that you had chosen someone. And I told myself I had no right to insert myself into a finished life." I laughed, a short, humorless sound. "Finished isn't the word I'd use." I told her then about the engagement that had ended quietly, painfully, about how I'd retreated afterward, mistaking emotional distance for stability. "I didn't know how to want things anymore," I said, "so I stopped." She listened without interruption. When I finished, she whispered, "I'm sorry." I shook my head. "You didn't do anything wrong." But even as I said it, doubt crept in. Over the next few days, the dynamic between us shifted. The ease was gone. We still met, still talked. But something fragile had cracked. I found myself wondering if I was just another anchor, another symbol she'd attached meaning to. And she, in turn, grew careful, guarded, as if afraid one wrong step would confirm her worst fear. The letters had brought us together, but now they stood between us. The breaking point came a week later. We were standing outside her apartment when she said, almost casually, "I think it's better if we don't see each other anymore." My heart lurched. "Is that what you want?" I asked. "No," she said immediately, then corrected herself. "I don't know." The honesty didn't help this time. "I don't want to be something you lean on until you're strong enough to leave," I said. Her eyes filled with tears. "That's not what you are to me." "Then what am I?" I asked. She couldn't answer. I walked away that night, not because I wanted to, but because staying felt like lying to myself. The next morning, I found one final envelope in my mailbox. Inside was a letter I hadn't expected. "I'm not asking you to wait. I'm asking you to understand why I couldn't." There was no return address, and suddenly the silence felt louder than any unanswered question. 2 days later, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "You don't know the whole story." I didn't open the email right away. I stared at the subject line for a long time, my thumb hovering over the screen like the decision itself might change what was written inside. "You don't know the whole story." Eventually, curiosity gave way to something else. Hope. I opened it. It read, "Alex, I didn't tell you everything because I didn't want my recovery to become a transaction. But I owe you the truth. Not as someone who needed you, but as someone who chose you." The words stopped me cold. Chloe explained that the dependency phase hadn't lasted long, that therapy, time, and rebuilding her own life had changed the way she related to the world. "The letters," she said, "evolved, not as lifelines, but as gratitude." I continued reading. "I stopped writing to survive. I kept writing to remember who I had become." She admitted something else too. The reason she was leaving wasn't escape, it was opportunity. A position she'd turned down twice before, once out of fear, once out of self-doubt. This time she was choosing it. Then she said, "I wanted you to know that meeting you didn't make me stay." It reminded me that I didn't have to run. I reread the email 3 times. Not because I didn't understand it, but because I did. And because it forced me to confront something uncomfortable. I wasn't afraid she needed me. I was afraid I needed her. That night, I pulled out the drawer where I'd kept her letters. I hadn't realized how many there were. Dozens. Each one a fragment of a connection neither of us had named. For the first time, I noticed something else. Every letter ended the same way. Not with her name, but with a question mark. The next morning, I did something I'd never done before. I wrote back. Not an email, a letter. I didn't know where she was anymore, but I knew she would receive it. Somehow. I wrote, "I've spent years avoiding anything that felt like risk. Not because I was afraid of pain, but because I was afraid of wanting something enough to lose it." Writing felt strange. Vulnerable. Necessary. I told her about the engagement. About how I'd mistaken safety for happiness. About how her letters had quietly unsettled me long before I ever met her. And then I wrote, "You didn't interrupt my life. You reminded me I was still living it." I folded the letter and mailed it without expectation. Then I waited. Weeks passed. Life resumed its familiar rhythm. But something was different. Lighter. As if naming the truth had freed space I didn't know was crowded. One evening, as I was leaving work, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I got your letter. My breath caught. We spoke on the phone that night. Longer than we meant to. About small things. Ordinary things. It felt easy. Before hanging up, she said, "I'm coming back." My heart raced. For good? For a visit, she said, laughing softly. I don't want to run ahead of myself. I smiled into the quiet room. Neither do I. When she returned, everything felt different. There was no mystery now. No imbalance. Just two people meeting in the present, not the past. We walked. We talked. We learned each other slowly, deliberately. And one evening, as we sat across from each other in silence, she reached for my hand. Not because she needed it, because she wanted it. Months later, she made her choice. Not to stay, not to leave, but to build something that allowed both. We learned how to miss each other without breaking, how to grow without drifting. The letters stopped. Not because they weren't needed, but because we were finally speaking directly. Last week I found one final envelope. Inside was just 2 lines. It said, "Some moments don't end. They just wait until both people are ready." She smiled when I looked up. "So," she said, "are you?" I took her hand. This time I didn't hesitate. "I am." Every life is shaped by quiet choices and the courage to feel something real. These are the moments we don't plan but never forget. Please comment, like, and subscribe so you don't miss the next story.